Hi everyone and welcome back. And today's topic is to pre or not to pre, which is the question for the Tascam Model 12 mixer, audio interface and surface controller and multi-track recorder. But first, let me define what I mean by pre and not to pre, because some might get confused or as pre being preamplifier. In this instance, I'm talking about whether to set the recording point for either the multitrack or to the USB to be pre-compressor, pre-EQ, or after the compressor or after the EQ. If we set the point after the compressor or after the EQ, what gets recorded onto the multitrack or onto the USB is with the settings that we set for the compression as well as the EQ. This procedure only applies for the Tascam Model 12 because it has a digital architecture. For Model 16 and 24, it's not possible, and it cannot be possible because those are analog architecture. That means they have circuit boards to drive and route the audio. Now, because the Model 12 is digital, through our menu system, which I will show you in just a minute, we can set the USB send point to before the compressor as dry signal, after the compressor or after the compressor and the equalizer. So let me show you using the menu system of the Tascam how to set this post-compression and post-equalizer setting.
Here are the steps to check and set up the Tascam Model 12's post-compression and post-EQ settings for each of the channels. You press the menu, and then using the jog wheel, we scroll down until we find Mixer and press down. Right at the first option is MTR USB send point. This affects both the multi-track recorder within the Tascam Model 12 and the USB send point. Press down the jog wheel. In here we can actually see channel 1 and all the way to channel 9 and 10 as pre-comp. This is by default, pre-comp. And if we press down again, here we can choose the pre-comp, post-compression, and post-EQ. Post-EQ means compression and EQ. And that's how we select. And we can exit whether we want channel 1 or channel 2 or channel 3 and any of the channel. Let's select post-compression for that one, and for channel 4, post-EQ. So we can have different settings for all. To make it easy as well, we have all option. By pressing the button here, function 4 button, we can post-compression for all the channels, and press it again, post-EQ for all the channels, and press it again, we go back to pre-compression.
Now that you know how to set the point, let me quickly describe the audio routing of each of the channels, and they're all identical. When the signal comes in from the gain, it comes down to the low cut, and then depending on our USB send point, it will be just before the compressor that will go into the recorder or through USB. And then if that is the setting, then the rest of the signal will follow to the compressor, follow the EQ, the auxiliary send points, panning, the fader, and then depending on which button we press, main or sub, either or both of them, it will go to the main or the sub outputs. If we send post-compressor, that means the signal will come down to the compressor and the point that is picked up is after the compressor, before the equalizer, and being recorded into the multi-track recorder or to the USB, and everything else follows as I explained earlier. If we select post EQ, that means the signal is going to follow from the gain all the way down to compressor and down the equalization, and then it will pick up from that point to the multi-track recorder or the USB and follow the rest the same. And as I mentioned, if we have the point after the compressor or after the EQ, any EQ settings that we set will get printed or recorded onto the multi-track or in your DAW via the USB. And once you record with those settings, it's not reversible. You cannot change it back. Where if you record dry, because the signal is recorded dry, you can still go back and change to your heart's content. Of course, you can still go and change it. Even if you recorded and you realize that it was too much bass, you can certainly turn it down. But it has some consequences, which I will talk about in a minute. Now, talking about consequences, the problem or the issue comes when you are playing back from the multi-track recorder, which feeds back to the channel, or through the USB if you are feeding and remixing on the mixer. But most likely when you are recording onto the multi-track recorder here. Because when you play back the track, and if you had your USB send point, let's say post EQ, it recorded with all those EQ settings with lots of bass and lots of high-end treble. When it's playing back, the playback point is before the compressor, not after the EQ. That means now it will double up on your EQ settings. That means you need to have to make sure that all your EQ settings are centered so that you don't have any gain or reduction. Same with the compression. So if you had compression while recording and you had the setting post compression or post EQ, now you have to turn the compression off so that you keep the audio, the characteristics of the audio that you actually recorded. Unless, of course, you want to have extreme compression. So you can do post compressor and then have some compression in there and record it. And on playback, you can apply even more compression if that is what you want. Same goes with the EQ. Let's say you have a really boomy sound that's coming in, so you can turn it down. So all your bass, you can turn it down from the EQ, record it post EQ, and on playback, you can have it again. That means it's going to reduce even further. If that's what you want, that's an ideal situation for it. But if you are recording in your DAW, I personally recommend you leave pre-compression and equalization. That way, any equalization or compression you have while you are recording will have no effect in your DAW, and then in your DAW you can apply all the compression and equalization you require to have a balanced mix. Another scenario that you want your recording to be pre-compressor and pre-EQ is that when you are using the mixer for live situation, when you're using the mixer as live mixer and you've got a band and you want to capture their performance on the multi-track recorder, you want all of that to be dry because you are using the equalization and the compression to suit the hall or the room that you are performing in. So you are using the equalizer to compensate for the characteristics of the room. The hall or the room might be too boomy or too bright. So you're turning the equalization to make sure that it sounds right live. But you don't want that to be reflecting in your recording, so that when you take the recording in your studio and remix it again, you have dry signal. And you don't have the effects that you use with compression and EQ to balance the whole. Now that you know the purpose and the reasons for post EQ and post compression settings that you can have in the Tascam Model 12. I hope you had a better understanding. Let me know in the comments, how would you process it? What would you have pre-compression or post-compression or post-EQ? It is something that gives you more creativity. Let me know in the comments below. If this video was helpful, make sure you give me the thumbs up. There we go. And as always, thanks for watching and have a great time making music. See you in the next one.